Do you work in human resources? Are you interested in retaining your employees at a clip of 72%? Or perhaps you're more interested in their job performance rating 90% or higher? If I've piqued your interest, then perhaps you could consider hiring individuals with disabilities. In order to enrich your environment and diversify your workforce. During the course of today's webinar, you'll hear from business coaches, individuals who work in inclusive employment, and first-hand accounts of what it means to give individuals with disabilities a job in order to seize the opportunity to advance the quality and productivity of your business. I'm Kevin McShan, and I'm excited to be with you today to help you gain a competitive edge over your competition and to help you foster an inclusive environment where all voices are valued and allow you as human resources professionals to view the hiring process from an inclusive perspective. Good morning, everybody. I'm super excited to be with you for today's webinar. My name is Kevin McShan, and I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you all about enriching your environment and engaging your workforce. If you've followed this channel at all, you know that I have a background in inclusive employment for individuals with disabilities, and you know it's essentially important to move the needle of progress forward for all segments of our population, but particularly for those who have a disability. You know, I don't need to tell you that they are disproportionately excluded from the workforce. Certainly not providing them a sense of financial security is certainly a hindrance to the overall development of our economy as a whole. So today's presentation is all about changing the narrative when it comes to employing individuals with disabilities and making sure that they have a seat at the table of inclusion where decisions are made and advancements are happening. So with that, we're going to begin our conversation today with remarks from business coach Stephen Bates, who has a different philosophy and outlook on inclusion and the inclusion of others in the workforce. So with that, we'll play the remarks and we'll talk about them on the other side.
I'd like to answer it in a slightly different way. I don't believe in equality. I don't believe in equality. I think equality is something we need to get to so we can get to something more important, which is individual merit. And unfortunately, we haven't got equality in the races. We haven't got equality in the sexes. And it's ridiculous that after years and years, we're still battling for that stuff. You know, me being a white, middle-aged male, you know, I'm supposedly at the top of the tree, and so equality is something, unfortunately, we still need to get right. But more importantly than equality, we need to be able to see someone for the skills and the things they bring, regardless of who they are, because then you're getting the most value out of that individual, and who knows who they could be. So one of my team is disabled. And I am so pleased that he's in the team because he does all the stuff much better than I could do. And he does all the stuff I hate doing, and he's brilliant at it. And the fact that he's disabled is actually irrelevant. We have to make some considerations But I have regular conversations where I'm supporting able-bodied members of my team who are stressed out with their kids, and they've got problems in life too. So to me, it's like, well, everyone's got things they need to deal with. And yeah, it's interesting to me. It's irrelevant that he's disabled. We just have to make consideration when he's in the office, because he needs a different setup. But he's actually just really valuable.
Yeah, I always told employers that sometimes it's important to fit the job to the person instead of fitting the person to the job, right?
Oh, I would say that for anybody, absolutely anybody, because you want the best individual you can get. And they may be in a wheelchair. Who cares? Who cares?
Diversity of perspective is very important, isn't it?
That's why you hire a team. And that's what back to leadership, because there's this crazy thing saying there is no I in team. Well, there's no I in the word, but every person in a team is an individual. And that's what makes a team strong. It's also its biggest weakness if the leaders and the managers can't glue them together to work well. But you want individuals, you want people who think differently, different backgrounds, different thoughts, different ways, different skills, everything. So it's down to the leaders to be able to mold this into a team, because it's like having a soccer team or a hockey team, and everyone has exactly the same skill set. Well, they'll get beaten every week, wouldn't they? So you need that diversity. So to me, it's like, it's an interesting question about inclusion, about diversity. But to me, it's almost like, well, hopefully I'm practicing what I preach. I'm looking for the individual. I'm not looking for equality.
Leveling the playing field. It's always important to do it when we talk about corporate leadership and individual merit in leadership when it comes to inclusive employment. Individuals with disabilities, of course, can provide a different set of perspectives and allow business people to view the world from a different lens when it comes to inclusive hiring, the way they solve problems and get work done. So I think Stephen's point here is well taken, because when we go past the notion that it is a charity or a good noble cause to hire people with disabilities and view them for their individual merit, regardless of the fact whether they have a disability, then I truly believe that investment and inclusion in the workforce can be fully realized. But it all starts with wanting to change the environment and culture and making it a condition of success. So now I want to talk to you about one of the greatest things I think life has to offer all of us, whether we have a disability or we don't. I think regardless of social economic status, the one thing life provides us, as you can see there on the screen, is a chance to talk about the diversification of ideas and objectives. Because I think the full measure of inclusion can only be realized if all voices are at the table of inclusion in both the employment setting and societal differences at large. Because I think when we bring together a variety of perspectives and opinions, that's when full inclusion can be realized. Now, that's not to say that we're always going to agree, because we won't. But full perspective of ideas and the idea that we all have a value add to the workplace is essentially important to remember. And now I want to talk to you about my friend Kevin McShan. Kevin has a great and interesting job. I'm kind of jealous of the job that Kevin has. Kevin is the president of what we call Mako Design and Invent. He helps entrepreneurs bring their new inventions to bear and to market faster, and it helps people develop products that help us advance every aspect of the workplace and of our world faster. So Kevin helps people bring their inventions to life. And when I asked him in a recent interview about diversity, equity, and inclusion, this is what he had to say. And we'll talk about his remarks on the other side of the flip.
Absolutely. Just keep in mind that the more diversity, and no matter which way you define diversity, the more diversity means more ideas. More ideas means the better ideas are going to start trickling down. It all starts at the top of the funnel, right? Which is breadth of ideas. And that might be the way a business is run, the type of business, the product, the offering, whatever it might be. The more diversity that you have in your life in general, no matter who you are, the more you put yourself out there, the more you open your mind to different ideas, different possibilities, different ways of life, etc. The more ideas that there will be, and the more seeds that you plant, the more of those will actually grow into great things. So diversity, no matter how you define it, is important in any business. And the more that you can incorporate in, the better off you'll be across the board.
Diversity of perspective also provides your business with a competitive advantage. Individuals with disabilities have always found ways to innovate, to always think forward. And for a business, if we want to talk about a reduced training cost, leveling the playing field when it comes to making sure that they come to work. The Ontario Chamber of Commerce, as you saw at the beginning of this presentation in the introduction, 72% of businesses that hire people with disabilities retain them at that clip, 72% higher than their non-disabled counterparts. 80% of accommodations for folks with disabilities range from between $500 to $1,000. So it is doable. And they perform higher in terms of job performance, as you also saw at the beginning of this presentation. They're at a 90% clip, and their attendance rate when they go to work is 86% higher than their non-disabled counterparts. So my friends, there's a strategic advantage and a competitive edge that you will be gaining if you hire individuals with disabilities. By embracing diversity, you also embrace diversity of thought, diversity of problem solving, and diversity of both ingenuity, innovation, and inclusion. So it's a win-win for all aspects of your operation, and it also increases morale as well. So again, there are multiple benefits to hiring people with disabilities, and again, it goes back to enriching your environment and diversifying your workforce. Now I want to take a couple of minutes to pause and talk about what we've seen so far. Having the opportunity to do what I do on a daily basis and engaging in conversations about inclusive employment and having conversations with business owners and HR executives and corporate executives is essentially important in terms of moving the needle forward when it comes to individual progress and individual marriage, because I think an ongoing conversation of inclusion and education is essentially important, because in fairness to employers, they don't know what they don't know. So I think when we have conversations about educating them about the positive benefits of hiring folks with disabilities, it's essentially important to close the gap of misunderstanding and come to the center of unity of understanding when it comes to embracing the benefits of hiring people with disabilities. And I wanted to share a personal story as well. I graduated college in 2010, my friends, and I did not get my first paid job out of college until 2016. It provided me a great deal of perspective on how to deal with adversity, overcoming obstacles. As you know, if you've followed any part of my journey, I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. That simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally, and it affects things like my muscle movement, muscle dexterity, and my endurance. But one thing I've always told myself is, yes, I have a disability, but it doesn't define the way I live my life. And for many people with disabilities, talent is an equally distributable asset. However, access to opportunity is not. So if you're in a position of power when it comes to hiring, you work in human resources, or if you're a corporate leader, it's important to always, I'm sure, gauge and manage your risk versus your reward. And certainly the reward statistics bear it out. The rewards of hiring people with disabilities far outweigh the detractors. So I want you to always think about creating a culture and embracing the conditions to be successful when it comes to hiring people with disabilities, because not only will it affect your bottom line in a positive way, it'll also affect your ability to better compensate your employees from a holistically whole perspective, and it will also allow you to serve your customer base, wherever it is, whether it's small, medium-sized, or larger, at a better rate, because you have, again, that diversity of perspective. So now I want to bring you remarks from Patty Mara, who is a business coach who tells us that there is a business cost to not embracing diversity in the workforce. So we'll look at the clip and then we'll talk about it on the public side.
Yeah, very good. Okay, that's a multi-layered question. Let's start with breaking through barriers. So breaking through barriers was a program I created literally on demand. It was a request. And it was somebody I knew, an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, who was in a Detroit chapter of Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. So every year his forum group does a retreat, and he had asked me to create a program for the members of his forum group for their retreat, and specifically to identify where they were holding themselves back. And I only work with entrepreneurial owned and operated businesses. And I do that because entrepreneurs are on the court. So they're entrepreneurs, I mean, literally your business is a direct reflection of what you're putting out into the marketplace and with your team. You get the feedback all the time, whether you like it or don't, it's great feedback. So, if you want to grow your business, one component of growing your business is always to be growing yourself, looking at where you've got blocks, where you've got limitations, what are you not seeing? So entrepreneurs are always growing. I like to say they're on the court of life. So that was the Breaking Through Barriers program, was specifically to create exercises in the environment to identify self-limiting beliefs and habits, and then a bigger vision to step into. And I ended up, it was a very successful program, and I ended up doing it for a number of different groups, but that was actually the start of that. Now, tag that in, because I think the really important question you asked is about, diversity hiring in the workplace. And I'd like to bring in a concept from Strategic Coach. Now, Strategic Coach is a wonderful organization I've been involved with since 1997. Dan Sullivan and Bab Smith are the entrepreneurs behind it. And one of the core concepts in Strategic Coach is unique ability. That every person has unique talents and abilities. And so it's really about finding the right fit. And I think there's so many different challenges going on in the world right now. And one of the things I think that's been really beautifully unraveling or opening up is an awareness of the importance of diversity in a business, in a community, all of that. Because first of all, the marketplace is diverse. So there's a great term called creative destruction. Creative conflict. If you want really great ideas in a business, you want to create an environment of creative conflict, which means you want as much diversity as possible. Gender, age, community, background, you want as much diversity as possible, because that's going to give you the widest drawing of ideas and discussion from. So if you've got a big enough team and you don't have some kind of diversity in your team, and it's whether it's, special talents, visible disabilities, and I don't like that word, different genders, different skin, different everything. You want to have that diversity, because you're probably missing out on reaching a part of the marketplace because you don't know how to include their thinking in what you're promoting or positioning. So anyways, roundabout circle, Kevin, I think we're more aware of it today, and we're more aware if there's a lacking, that there's actually a cost. There's a business cost to not having diversity, and we're looking at unique ability. I mean, look at the talent that you bring. One of the things I noticed with you, Kevin, is you get underneath and understand something uniquely well, and you ask great questions. So, you pull out almost like what's underneath an understanding and bring an awareness that I haven't seen in other people. So that's a talent, and where's that talent best fit? And I think that's the question we should be asking, rather than, what are, challenges.
Don't limit your belief system. Don't limit the possibilities of advancement. And embrace the differences of diversity. I think that's the overarching message here from Mcshane. I think when we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we talk about we can approach it from different angles and different perspectives, because we all view the hiring process from all different angles and all different perspectives and all different ideas of how to attack the fundamental principle of inclusion. But I think there's one core nucleus concept we can all agree. Diversity is the fastest way to uncover potential. Diversity is the fastest way to uncover the potential of the possible. For individuals with disabilities, that means two things. It means a sense of financial security, yes, but it also means a sense of societal inclusion. When you give someone with a disability a job, you also provide them a sense of empowerment that they haven't had in all likelihood in many parts of their lives. You have the power to be a change maker. You have the power to embrace diversity, because embracing diversity means that you've accepted the notion that we all have the capacity to advance and advance forward the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The inclusion of voices, of all voices, regardless of the background in which they come, is essentially important to, again, moving the needle of progress forward in the sense of an economic impact, which you'll hear about in a moment, but also in the sense of positively impacting the productivity of your business, corporation, or organization. When you embrace diversity, you embrace impact when it comes to embracing the enrichment of the way you operate and the way you look at business and the way you look at your customer base. You know, one of the things Patty also says is when you want to advance in business, you have got to put yourself, if you're in a position of leadership in business, in the position of the customer. How are you going to better serve a wider scope of people? And one way you do that is by incorporating individuals with disabilities into the workforce, because they bring a new set of diversity, but they also bring an increased customer base that you may not be accustomed to serving, which again opens up the floodgates of the possibilities of advancement for your business. Now I want to talk to you about economic impact and the economic impact of hiring people with disabilities has on both your bottom line and your organization's productivity and positivity in your workforce. So for that, I enlisted the assistance of my buddy Eric Mason, who's the Chief Financial Officer of the City of Quincy, Massachusetts. And Eric also incorporates individuals with disabilities into his workspace as well. And he says it's a win-win from an economic perspective. So we'll take a look at the clip and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Oh, I think the financial benefits in it are almost immeasurable. So I've actually talked before on ADA advocacy. I have type 1 diabetes. I have people in my office with ADA issues. I have a gentleman who works in my office who has CP. I have a gentleman in my office who's legally blind. And what I've learned is that it, just like with type 1 diabetes affects everybody differently. That giving people with, and I don't even like to use the word disability because I've seen them be more able than traditionally able-bodied people. What it does, it brings a different perspective. I can't tell you how. I'll give you a real life example. We're moving to a much more automated paperless system here, and the gentleman in my office who has vision issues, he's absolutely brilliant and he's a great finance mind. So I said to him, he understands our AP system better than I do. He just does. He's brilliant at AP. So I asked him. I said, I go, do you want to run this program? He goes, yeah. And one of the reasons he's been so successful at it is he has vision problems. His computer is a high contrast computer. So if you hand him a piece of paper, he has a difficult time reading it. But if it's on his computer screen, he can read it. He can read it better. I don't want to say read it perfectly. So he understands how to optimize everything for computer usage. So by putting him in a position where he's leading our entire city's digitization platform for our AP system. He's the best person in the world. He's better than me because he knows everything has to be on a computer. He knows how to make it readable, because he spends his whole time looking to optimize that. So I'm selfish. I looked at that and said, I'm going to take advantage of that. That's somebody with a great talent who A, knows how to do it, and B, understands it at a far more intricate level than I do. And he's going to apply that and make it a better system. So, but this story can play out over and over and over again at everything from local government to Fortune 500 companies to small businesses down the street. I think one of the biggest travesties in human history is the fact that for a long time people with who were different bodied, they were looked at as like, oh, what can they bring to the table? A lot. The answer is very simply a lot, and there's a huge economic benefit to bringing on people with who don't have traditional access. I mean, think of all the brilliant minds who were cast aside because they had impairments that had no bearing on their ability to perform a job. From a pure labor economic standpoint, that is just wasted resources. It's just like you have somebody with a brilliant mind, but because they may struggle, they need to take an elevator instead of a stairs, you're going to demean that person? No, that's a waste of economic talent. And I know it sounds selfish to put it in the terms of economic talent, but when I've spoken on this previously, that's what I always tell them. Like I asked you, I was in front of a group of business people maybe about 5 years ago. I said, does anybody know what the average cost to make an ADA compliant bathroom is? And people, I had one guy, 50,000, 25,000. I go, $5,300. That is the average cost to make an ADA compliant bathroom. And that bathroom will last 20 years at ADA compliance for $5,300. I go, how much do you think you think you hire somebody? They're not going to get you $5,300 in profit over the course of 20 years? And everybody's like, no, if you hire somebody, you definitely get more than that. So what's the turnoff? But I've known so many people who try to do the mental gymnastics to make it not make sense. But what the rational economic view of it is that bringing on people who have different capacities, both physical and mental, can bring a huge amount of different perspective, which can make you more efficient, and they're just efficient workers too. In fact, people who fall into traditional ADA categories have much longer tenure at companies. And you ask any HR director, what's the biggest cost to a company? They'll say training new people. So you have a cohort that sticks around longer and are traditionally just as efficient. And then I hear people say, well, it's difficult to bring them on. I'm like, no, it's not, and they stay on longer. So the economic benefit of bringing on people with disabilities I think is very high. And I personally have seen it in my job as somebody who is disabled and somebody who has people in my office who have those issues. I'm very productive. I think that a company can only benefit from bringing on.
Bringing on people with disabilities is a financial advantage that many people have to take advantage of. We live in an instant gratification society for sure. We always want to know, when it comes to business, what's the return on investment? I do this, then what is the business cost to me? What are the business benefits? And I think Eric provides the perspective of acceptance. When you accept the fact that individuals with disabilities have a different way of operating, but they can also get the job done in a more efficient manner, it's a win. It's a win for everyone because it means that we're making progress towards unity of understanding, both from an economic, societal, and individual standpoint. The changing of perspectives is vitally important. And it provides you with financial security to your business or organization. So again, it's an opportunity that business people, if they're smart, they'll seize the opportunity to advance what they're doing in business by hiring people with disabilities and embracing diversity, because embracing diversity is the first key of making sure that inclusion is the core fundamental value that you hold the highest regard for. But first, again, it goes to creating a culture, celebrating the conditions, and then also infusing the benefit into your business by hiring people with disabilities. Whether, as Eric said, it's reducing the cost that you have in training new people, or reducing the turnover you have when you have to hire people, or reducing the amount of time that they're absent from work. So the positive benefits of hiring folks with disabilities are immeasurable. And if you don't do it now, then your competitors will have an advantage over you that you wish that you would have been at the forefront of embracing, because it'll put your business on the fast track to success. And now I'm going to talk to you about closing the gaps of education for employers and HR professionals who are looking to gain more knowledge and understanding about the benefits of hiring folks with disabilities. And for that, I bring you remarks from Jacqueline Smith-Jordan. She's a career practitioner for an employment company called Agilic, who works to provide employment services and employment training for folks with disabilities in Canada. And I asked Jacqueline her thoughts on her message to employers about the positive benefits of hiring people with disabilities, which she also provided, but she also took some time to talk about closing the labor market gap and the benefits and advantages hiring people with disabilities does provide. So we'll take a look at the clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Yeah, absolutely. And from a more broader perspective, what do you think is the key to establishing sustainable career diversification for folks with disabilities?
Career diversification. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said before about education. So, and I'm thinking about that in two different ways. I'll start with the employers. So educating employers, again, on the business case of having a more diverse workforce and the positive effects that that's going to have on their operations, whether economically, whether in terms of the morale of the individuals working within their organization. But I think also education on the client's end. Sometimes when you're in that vulnerable state, or if you are someone who is part of an equity seeking group who feels that you have been particularly marginalized for the majority of your life, or in this particular set of circumstances in terms of seeking employment, that can do a number on how you're feeling about yourself mentally and emotionally, and trying to educate and help that individual in terms of, you know, their mental models and what they believe they can do and what they believe that they can accomplish. One of the things I like about your message when you are speaking is about kind of finding your passion and being really aware of what your strengths are and operating from your strengths instead of operating from what you perceive to be or what may actually be an area of weakness or limitation for you. So I think those are, I think that's part of the key to that diversity is really focusing on the strengths rather than the limitations and the value that that client can bring to the employer. is going to be key. And again, I'm going to go back to that starts with education. I think there's a lot missing in terms of educational pieces for employers and recruiters and individuals who have like hiring capabilities. You know, we're hearing right now in Canada that there's a shortage of workers, but there's also a large population of individuals within these marginalized groups, either racialized individuals or persons with disabilities, who are seeking employment. And so what is the disconnect? Why are employers ignoring a real viable part of the workforce and not considering these individuals for employment?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Jacqueline, as you know, I do a lot of speaking engagements for employers and the positive benefits of hiring people with disabilities. So for any employer who may be watching this, I'm going to give you the floor and sort of give me your sort of, for lack of a better term, I'll say a sales pitch to an employer about the positive benefits of embracing diversity at work. I'm curious, what would you tell an employer who would want your perspective on that matter?
About embracing diversity at work.
Yeah.
Again, I would go to, if I'm meeting with a particular employer, I would go armed with some statistics maybe that are relevant to their sector or the type of work or operations that they run specifically. But there are some general studies and statistics that show that we'll use individuals with disabilities, because that was the group that we were talking about before, that, as I mentioned before, they have lower turnover rates. They tend to have a more positive work ethic. Having individuals with disabilities within a workforce has been shown to increase the morale of the other individuals that work there. Accommodations for that individual helps that individual to have a sense of independence, and they are now able to contribute perhaps a little bit more so in terms of economic ability, ability to purchase and do all these things in the community that maybe they didn't have before. Also, really thinking about what I mentioned before, which is opening up your workforce to greater creativity and ideas. If everyone in your workforce looks the same and has had the same experiences, you are limiting yourself to some of the solutions that you could potentially come up to or come up with for business problems that you may actually have in your operations, versus getting a diverse group of individuals together who have different life circumstances. Oftentimes individuals who have had a disability or are part of a marginalized group have greater adaptation skills and have had to build resilience in different areas of their life and have strategies that could be useful for that particular employer, for not only their colleagues in that workforce, but perhaps that could be useful for products that can be developed for their customers or services that can now be developed for customers as a result of these creative ideas and different ways of thinking about all of these problems that may exist, or services or resources that could be created that don't come about if everyone has the same way of thinking and has only ever had the same level of experiences. I think that's what I would say to employers, and also for them to realize, I think sometimes there's a fear of how will I support someone who maybe I haven't had the opportunity to support before. And one of the things that we do is help employers through that process. So if we maybe are placing an individual with a disability with an employer, we offer ongoing support, on-the-job support to that candidate and also to the employer to make sure that that's going to be a successful journey, that it's going to be mutually beneficial for both parties involved. And sometimes employers are not sure of, what am I going to need to do to support that person? What is the accommodation going to be like? Will I need to teach them differently or orient them differently? And part of the service that we provide helps them through that process so that they're not going through that alone. And they have individuals who are educated and knowledgeable who can actually help them through that. So that's one of the other things that I would mention, that it doesn't have to be, there doesn't need to be fear around how am I going to work through this process alone as an employer.
Finding your passion and purpose is essentially important for any aspect of life. But when it comes to employment, it's also vitally important. And it's also important that it's a two-way street. Yes, as an employer, you have the power to make a difference in the field of inclusive employment. But you also have the power to enrich individuals with disabilities with knowledge, responsibility, and a sense of ownership, positive ownership of their potential. So when we look at education and making sure that employers have all the tools that they need in the toolbox, when we embrace the different ways of solving a problem or coming to a solution or empowering passion and purpose. And for individuals with disabilities, again, the equitable access to opportunity is in your hands when it comes to employment. And as you heard in Jacqueline's remarks, there are organizations such as Agility that can assist you in screening resumes, in screening candidates, and helping them develop the job training and the job development skills that they need to be successful. So, when it comes to you as an employer, do a little bit of research on which organizations are near you and how they can help you be a better workforce in terms of infusing individuals with disabilities into your work environment. So again, it's about passion and purpose and embracing the possible by hiring individuals with disabilities. And the final video remarks I want to bring to you today comes from my brother Keith Monke, who runs an organization called Employ You. They're a nonprofit organization in Orlando in Central Florida that helps individuals with disabilities find, maintain, and thrive in employment. And you know, Keith and I share the same passion to provide individuals with disabilities with both the financial and social security that having a job provides. You know, you also provide them with a sense of social identity and social foundation that they need to thrive in all aspects of life. And Keith brings you remarks about the positive benefits of being that root of stability for individuals with disabilities. So we'll take a look at the final clip and we'll talk about it on the other side. And I know that we share the same passion of giving individuals with disabilities meaningful work. We'll provide them with self-esteem, self-confidence, and greater independence. So I'm just wondering if you can comment and give me some thoughts on that sentiment as well.
I think employment, I've always thought employment is really the root of stability for your health, mentally and physically. Whenever, I mean, there's been times where I was unemployed, like when I first moved to Florida, I didn't have a job when I came down here. I just figured I'd figure it out when I get here. And so, it took me probably a couple months to land where I wanted to land. And I know in that time frame, my insecurities were higher. I felt like I had some more higher anxieties. I was more insecure. It's just, I think, employment just brings a sense of well-being, that contribution. It gives you a lot more options in life, when I've been poor several times in my life, and, you're limited when you don't have, funds. So coming in. I believe it's really the root of that. And, if you can help somebody, I could also say, like, if you don't know how to get a job, it also is very easy to become rather insecure. So, because most people don't practice interviewing, they don't do that so much. They don't maybe get a resume done by somebody professionally, or really learn how to do a professional resume. And so when you're going out there and competing with thousands of people, it can be really frustrating. But what we do generally is we teach people to be really good at getting a job. We go, this is your full-time job now, is getting employed. So, like, you got to get really good at this. You have to practice. You don't just play a sport without practicing. You practice it. So we get customized answers to your interview questions, and we get them on cue cards, and you just practice and drill it and keep on going until you feel confident that you can answer any question that comes at you. The questions they ask at the interview aren't always going to be what's on your cue card, but you have some prepared answers for that. Generally will work for most questions that are like that. So our goal is to teach people how to sell themselves, and teach them what type of value they're bringing to the table when they come up for that interview and they talk to the employer. So confidence is what it's all about. Insecurity is the common thread that most people have, and especially people that have disabilities. It's really difficult to not be insecure when you have disabilities. Just your whole life, people have been telling you to avoid the difficult things, because your parents didn't want to see you fail. So that can build over time, and so everybody needs some preparation, and they need the skills to give them the confidence so that they can feel good about going into an interview.
My friends, providing comfort and empowerment and a sense of sustainable stability. Folks with disabilities starts with providing them a job. It's the root cause of conflict. It's a consensus way where individuals with disabilities find themselves to be empowered from a financial, social, economic, societal perspective. When you give individuals with disabilities a job, you are affecting every aspect of their life. You have the power to be an influential change maker. And I never want you to forget that. I never want you to diminish the impact you can make. By giving them a job if you have a disability, individuals with disabilities, you open up the floodgates of life possibilities for folks with disabilities. You increase their confidence. You increase their self-esteem and morale. You give them a sense of purpose and belonging. So the final message today I want to leave you with as we wrap up today's webinar is about change. And the change that you can make as an employee. Because you just never know who's watching the next move you make as an employee. You have the power, the fortitude to be the change maker. You never know who's going to be watching and the level of impact you can make. So do yourself a favor and enrich yourself. Enrich your environment and diversify your workforce. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kevin McShan. It's been my honor and pleasure to be with you this morning to tell you all about diversifying your workforce, because it provides you with a competitive advantage. It provides you with a sense of belonging and acceptance, and you are now creating inclusive environments for communication, acceptance, continuity, and belonging. You have the power to be the influential change maker of today and tomorrow.